Thanks for joining us on Wisconsin Tonight.
And tonight, a father calls for action following the death of his 16-year-old son.
He has called this case a modern-day lynching. We are going to talk with that father in just a moment.
But first, some background on what led to the teenager's death.
Corey Stingley died at VJ's Food Mart in West Allis last December. He'd gone in to buy something to drink, but according to police reports, the clerk noticed liquor in Stingley's backpack that he had not paid for. The clerk was going to let Stingley return the bottles, but when the clerk reached for them, he said Stingley jumped the counter. The clerk jumped back, and customers took Stingley down and held him until police arrived. Police handcuffed him, but realized he wasn't breathing. They revived him and rushed him to the hospital, but he died 2 weeks later. Now a John Doe investigation is underway to determine if one of those customers should be charged with a crime for restraining Stingley.
And joining us now is Corey's father, Craig Stingley. First, let's express our condolences for the loss of your son.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Let's go back to that day in December. What is your understanding of what happened that day?
Well, Corey he was off school that day. He went to a local convenience store, and his intentions were to initially shoplift some alcoholic beverages. And as a 16-year-old boy, it's not uncommon that teenagers will participate in, indulge in alcoholic beverages. He knew it wasn't something that we approved of, but he was doing this, and during the course of this time, he had also went to the cooler and taken out a energy drink. And he walks up to the counter and he places the energy drink on the counter, and he had the 4 bottles of alcoholic beverage in his book bag, which he had on his back. He got into a discussion once he approached the counter, got into a discussion with the clerk, the store manager, and the store manager said to him that he noticed on their video camera, the surveillance camera, that Corey had placed some items in his book bag. And he told me this himself, the store clerk did, that he told Corey if he would return those items, he wouldn't call the police. So Corey takes the book bag off, he places it on the counter, and the discussion continues. He reaches out his hand to ask the store clerk for his debit card back, because he had given him a debit card in order to pay for the energy drink, which was sitting on the counter in front of him. Well, the store clerk wouldn't give him the debit card. He set it down on the counter, and he proceeded to open up the book bag and remove the items. And Corey, from the video, it appeared that he was scared. So he reaches and grabs his debit card cleanly, nothing else in his hand, grabs the debit card, turns around to run, and when he turned around to run, 3 customers who were in the store proceeded to, as they say, restrain him. One of the customers grabbed Corey in a headlock. The struggle ensued. 2 other customers helped to continue with this attempt to restrain. And one of the gentlemen had his hands, if I'm not mistaken, like behind his back, because Corey's hands were not free, so he couldn't try to release himself from this chokehold that he was in. And they proceeded to struggle. And at a point, you see in the video where they actually had Corey restrained while he was still standing. These are 3 adult men. And Corey was about my height, a 16-year-old boy, weighed about 160 pounds. He's in excellent physical shape. But, for the force that was required by these 3 men to do what they did to him, I didn't think it was necessary, and I still don't think it was necessary for them to try to take him to the ground if their only intent was to restrain him. So as things proceeded, what they did was they took him to the ground. The gentleman who had him in the headlock still continued to hold him that way. And then another of the defendants came around the back of him, and apparently from the video, it looks like he was pushing down on Corey's head while he was still in the headlock. The other defendant was still holding Corey, and his arms were restrained. So they basically had him immobilized on the ground. And they held him there for approximately 10 to 15 minutes. And over the course of that time, as the doctors told us, his blood flow was cut off, and his air flow was cut off, and the medical examiner said that the cause of death was from asphyxiation through a violent struggle with multiple individuals. So, that's what led me and our family to believe that, for one, there was too much force exerted. Wasn't necessary. I mean, 3 grown men. Wasn't necessary for them to, use the amount of force that they did. Secondly, the fact that the DA has not issued the charges yet, it gives us the impression that, they're trying to find a way to not pursue the appropriate charges. We've been told that they are considering a lesser charge than homicide, something to do with endangerment. Well, Corey lost his life, and that exceeds endangerment in anybody's book. There are laws in the book that talk about reckless homicide and first-degree reckless homicide, second-degree reckless homicide, and so we believe that that would be the appropriate charges for this case.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Stingley, you're still obviously in a lot of pain, and this is very difficult, mm-hmm. and you are basically trying to get some answers, because right now your family is in limbo. Correct,
and that's the thing that prompted us to release the photos that we released recently, and to take up this opportunity that you've provided for us to come and share this with the community, because as a father, I've taught my children to do the right thing, and for me to see that video where my son is doing something that he knew I would not approve of, it broke my heart. At the same time,
I was going to say the DA has launched a John Doe investigation.
Correct.
As I understand it, this is a fairly complicated case from a legal standpoint, and therefore there certainly is no guarantee that there will be a determination with charges in this case. What will your reaction be if at the end of this process they decide shouldn't have happened, very tragic, but not a criminal charge or nothing that they feel like they can prosecute?
Well, I guess my response is going to be, what is the next level for us to pursue charges, whether it be on the federal level, for criminal charges particularly. Yeah. There's a lot of mention of civil charges, but this is a criminal act. My son was murdered, and that's what I believe. When I use the term lynching, I don't take that lightly. I mean, I think back to what happened to Emmett Till. He was killed, from a motive of what I would say was hatred. And, for looking at a woman, and then the people in that area made decisions that was criminal. And I think that this is, applicable to the case with Corey, where, here is a young 16-year-old boy. If the law would allow for 3, civilians to take the law into their own hands and end his life because he had the thought of shoplifting. Shoplifting isn't a crime punishable by death, and they don't have that authority. They should have never put their hands on them. So to answer your question, my position and our position is going to be, what does the law allow for us to do to get retribution, to get the justice that Corey deserves.
Yeah, and most of us really don't know what it is when it comes to civilian arrests and how far you can go, but you know that you don't want it to end in death.
Correct. And when you think about the fact, again, that, here he is, a teenage boy, he was not threatening anyone, he didn't have a weapon with him, so from that perspective, as a father, and then as a man just thinking, what would I have done in this situation, I have to ask myself, was that appropriate? And I have to say no. Yeah. They went overboard when they strangled him to death, basically.
Well, thank you very much for joining us here. I know it's not easy to talk about this, but we do appreciate your time today.
I appreciate you giving us this opportunity.
Yeah.
Craig Stanley, you are keeping your son's memory alive. Thank you.
We will continue to.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Worth noting here, we did invite DA John Chisholm to join us on the show tonight. His office did send us this message.
Now, he said the incident involving the death of Corey Stingley is still under review by the District Attorney's Office. Ethical rules prohibit the office from commenting on the case while it is pending. Craig Stingley, along with his legal counsel, has raised genuine concerns about the circumstances surrounding his son's death, and the District Attorney's Office has consulted with Mr. Stingley and his attorney.
in making a determination regarding whether to issue criminal charges in this case. We are considering Mr. Stingley's concerns as well as all other of the facts related to this matter and how the law applies to them. It may be a while before there is a determination by the grand jury. Obviously, whenever that happens, we will cover that not only here on Wisconsin Tonight, but on today's TMJ4.